General Hospital spoilers suggest that Drew Kane may end up in a wheelchair following his paralysis. Will a spinal injury turn Drew's world upside down and compel him to face new challenges? There could be a reason why the GH authors had the shooter fire 2 shots into Drew's back. The bullets wound extremely close to Drew's spine, thus there's a possibility of paralysis in this story. Drew may discover that he lacks mobility when he awakens. Drew may face some challenging updates if he is crippled and forced to adapt to life in a wheelchair. Of course, depending on the severity of his injuries, Drew may be able to regain use of his legs, but he will likely face agony and physical treatment. Drew may become a more sympathetic figure as a result of this predicament, which he might take advantage of. Drew may use this as another manipulative weapon, especially if he continues to pretend to be in a wheelchair after recovering. As for Drew's recuperation, we know he has connections for cutting-edge procedures. Drew demonstrated this by assisting in the planning of Kai Taylor's groundbreaking surgery. This could even relate to the tale that Jen Sidwell, Professor Henry Dalton, and Britt Westbourne are all involved in. If Britt can receive a medicine to assist heal her Huntington's condition, Drew may also benefit from a miracle paralysis cure. It could be used as leverage by the mystery boss to exert control over Drew and potentially broaden his intentions. Regardless, we must contemplate the potential of Drew becoming paralyzed on some level and finding himself in a wheelchair shortly. Those bullets coming that close to Drew's spine might have serious effects. According to General Hospital teasers, Cameron Matheson recently hinted at Drew's retaliation and provided a clue to his character's survival. Matheson made a "I'm gonna punch right back" comment in an interview with SOD, implying that Drew isn't done wreaking havoc in Port Charles. Cameron Matheson debuted as a Drew recast in 2021, portraying a decent guy. Drew remained a heroic character over several plots, but GH writers eventually decided to move the character in a darker direction. Although Matheson was initially hesitant to make the switch, he eventually came to enjoy the thrill of playing a villain. Matheson said it was like a little fantasy escape, because he's definitely not this bad in real life. Matheson now goes with the flow and leans toward playing a villain. The program surely offered a whodunit when a strange intruder shot Drew twice in his own home. To set up that twist, Matheson admitted that they had to take Drew to some truly unpleasant areas. Even Matheson was stunned by some of Drew's low punches and bad strategies. Matheson admitted that dealing with the changes in his character was difficult at first, but it became easier as the story progressed. Matheson also made some fascinating comments about the Drew mystery. Laura Wright hinted on social media last month, comparing Drew to J.R. Ewing is from Dallas, and Matheson made the same connection. "You know, I used to watch Dallas and it's extremely similar to the Who Shot J.R. story. Tale. I don't care if you're the punching bag for all of Port Charles. You're still at the heart of the plot, which feels pretty amazing. I'm like, bring it on. Let me be the punching bag. I got this, and I'm going to punch right back," Matheson stated. Of course, if Drew still has some fighting spirit, he may not be as dead as many fans imagine. Cameron Matheson replied to a fan on Instagram in August, confirming that he was not quitting the show. If that's the case, it explains why Matheson is still talking about hitting back and possibly plotting Drew's retribution now that he's been shot a few times. We should also take note of J.R. Drew survived his own whodunit on Dallas, which seems like another hint that he might do the same. Drew's entire world changed in a matter of seconds, placing him in a situation he never imagined he would be in. The strong, confident, and resilient man who always appeared to be in charge now sat in a wheelchair, his life permanently changed by a horrific spinal injury. It all began with what was meant to be a calculated gamble, one he thought he could take, but fate had other intentions. Drew hardly had time to grasp what had transpired when the accident occurred, and everything he thought he knew about his future vanished in an instant. Doctors were sad but cautiously optimistic at first, believing that rehabilitation and treatment would allow him to regain mobility. However, after weeks of tests, scans, and consultations, the truth became cruelly clear. Drew had suffered substantial spinal injury, and his ability to walk again was unclear at best. Drew, a man who valued independence and strength, took the diagnosis hard. Sitting in that hospital room, staring at the clean white walls, he fought to comprehend his new situation. He was dealing with more than just physical discomfort. The emotional toll of losing control over his own body was unbearable. He kept repeating the scene in his mind, trying to make sense of what had happened and wishing he could change it. However, no amount of sorrow or self-blame would change the truth. The injury had occurred, and he now had to deal with the consequences. Drew initially tried to put on a brave face for those around him, stating that he was okay and would recover stronger than before. But late at night, when the room was quiet and no one was looking, he broke down. The anguish of not being able to move as he once did, the embarrassment of needing assistance with basic things, and the gnawing fear of becoming a burden to those he cared about overtook him. It wasn't just about losing his ability to walk. It was about losing the life he had created, the future he had planned, and the man he saw himself as. The consequences were swift and overwhelming. His relationships were tested in unexpected ways. Some people stepped up, expressing support and compassion that he had no idea they had. Others backed away, unsure how to handle the changes or too uncomfortable to confront his pain. He saw that people were looking at him differently now, with pity, sympathy, or worst, avoidance. Even when they attempted to cover it, he could see the change in their gaze, which made him feel invisible, as if his injuries defined him more than anything else. Then came the battle with his own thoughts. Drew's resolve had always been his greatest asset, but it was now both a blessing and a curse. He plunged himself into therapy, fighting feverishly to regain as much function as possible while refusing to give up. But progress was painfully slow, and each small step forward was met with setbacks that left him fatigued and drained. There were days when he wondered if it was even worth it, and the weight of disappointment threatened to overwhelm him altogether. What made it even more difficult was that his injury revealed fractures in his personal life. Drew took pride in being the protector, the provider, the one others could rely on, but the roles were abruptly reversed. He despised having to rely on others and felt as if his strength had been taken away. Every connection became fraught with stress, particularly when loved ones attempted to push him toward acceptance when he was not ready. He did not want to be pitied. He did not want to be perceived as vulnerable or broken. He wanted to believe he could overcome his limits, but the continual reminders made it nearly impossible. Amidst the commotion, Drew was forced to confront aspects of himself that he had previously disregarded. The injuries caused him to slow down and reflect on the decisions he had made, the grudges he had held, and the relationships he had taken for granted. He began to see the world differently, seeing small details that he had previously neglected. The sound of laughter in the corridor, the comfort of someone simply sitting silently by his side, the short moments of connection that got him through the darkest of nights. However, the journey was not linear. There were raw times of wrath that left him shivering, moments when he struck out at those attempting to help him because the hurt inside was too great to bear. He despised the vulnerability, being forced to confront the frailty of life, and above all, the thought that his dreams might be slipping away. He was always thinking about his future, what it would mean if he never walked again, how it would influence his profession, his family, and his sense of himself. Those thoughts dominated him, and no matter how hard he tried to push them away, they always returned. One of the most difficult aspects was readjusting to life outside the home. The simple act of leaving the hospital felt like entering a completely new reality. The looks from strangers, the awkward silences, and the abrupt difference in how others regarded him were taxing. He felt as if the world had moved on without him, leaving him to figure out how he fit in. Even familiar areas felt unfamiliar, full of hurdles that reminded him of all he couldn't do anymore. Despite everything, Drew's spirit remained strong. Deep down, he believed he could reconstruct his life, even if it would never be the same. He began to focus on what he could control rather than what he had lost. Physical therapy became his anchor, allowing him to track his development no matter how tiny. Each minor victory, a glimmer of muscular activity, a slight rise in strength, gave him hope. An optimism, however tenuous, was enough to keep him going. Along the process, he became acquainted with others who had suffered similar hardships. Hearing their experiences, witnessing their tenacity, and realizing he wasn't alone shifted something inside him. It did not alleviate his grief or dread, but it did remind him that life after tragedy was still possible, even if it meant rewriting the entire screenplay. These new ties became a lifeline, providing him with understanding that his closest friends and relatives could not. Drew's sense of purpose began to shift over time. The old version of his life, in which strength was defined by physical ability and control, no longer suited him. He recognized that his worth was determined by the choices he made in the future, not by his ability to walk. That transformation of perspective did not occur overnight. Rather, it occurred in fragments, with modest realizations stitched together through sorrow, frustration, and unexpected moments of insight. However, the ambiguity continued. The doctors could not make any promises. There were experimental treatments, surgical alternatives, and therapies that provided a ray of hope, but nothing was assured. Every decision seemed weighty, intertwined with risk and optimism in equal parts. Drew wanted to fight for every conceivable possibility of recovery. Some days he wondered if accepting would be the most courageous thing he could do. Throughout it all, the individuals surrounding him played an important role. There were times when he nearly gave up, when the darkness threatened to swallow him whole, but a kind word, a familiar voice, or a soothing touch reminded him that he wasn't fighting alone. He realized who actually supported him, who believed in him even when he did not believe in himself. That gentle but unwavering devotion served as the foundation for him to reconstruct his life. Drew's journey became one of transformation, not because he chose it, but because he had no choice but to walk it, or for the time being wheel it. His disability did not define him, but it pushed him to confront facts he would have otherwise disregarded. It shattered him in ways he never expected, removing illusions and presenting the naked, unfiltered truth of survival. Drew eventually recognized that strength wasn't about standing tall or walking alone. It was about showing up every day, regardless of the pain, fear, or uncertainty. It was about choosing to live completely, even when things didn't go as he expected. The road ahead remained unclear, and there were no promises of a miraculous recovery. But Drew had discovered something equally powerful: the will to keep battling, hoping, and going forward, one way or another. Cameron Matheson's dramatic declaration about his character Drew's desire for vengeance sent shockwaves across the fanbase, sparking conjecture and excitement about what comes next for the troubled character. The phrase, "I'll punch right back," was more than simply a casual comment. It was a proclamation, a promise of action that hinted at Drew's flaming path, one in which he would rise from the ashes of betrayal, heartache, or whatever blow the writers had handed him this time. Matheson, who is recognized for his charisma both on and off screen, delivered the phrase with a spark that suggested he was just as invested in Drew's comeback as the audience was. This wasn't simply about a character getting even. It was about recovering control and expressing supremacy in a society where loyalty is transitory and trust is a currency that is sometimes misused. The intensity behind those remarks was powerful, a glimpse into a tale that could change dynamics, test friendships, and possibly even redefine Drew's role in the drama. Fans of the show will love this kind of tease. It's a single statement that promises drama and retribution in the style of Robin Hood. Drew, a character who has generally been the solid, dependable kind, appears to be breaking out of that mold. Matheson's delivery of the statement suggested a man pushed to his limits, ready to break free from the constraints of civility and fight fire with fire. Drew's generally calm and polite demeanor taking on a more confrontational stance is exciting. It's a turn that could reveal fresh facets to a beloved figure, who has occasionally been eclipsed by more flashy personalities. Matheson's suggestion at vengeance invites a closer look at Drew's resilience, his ability to absorb suffering and channel it into something powerful. The context of Drew's revenge is unknown, but the possibilities are limitless given the show's convoluted web of relationships and conflicts. Perhaps it's a personal betrayal, someone on the verge of crossing a line that they can't undo. Perhaps it's a professional slight, an overzealous power play by a rival. Whatever the reason, Matheson's statements elicit a visceral response, as if Drew has been pushed into a corner and is ready to come out fighting. The phrase "punch right back" suggests immediacy, a counterattack that is both deliberate and visceral, motivated by emotion as much as strategy. Fans can already imagine Drew, eyes blazing, squaring off against his opponent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Matheson's own intensity as an actor adds to this anticipation. He's always given Drew a grounded intensity that makes him sympathetic while yet aspirational. A character who is tough but not untouchable, principled but not faultless. The concept of his channeling that rage into a revenge narrative seems like a natural progression, an opportunity to see Drew's edges sharpened. Fans know Matheson can pull it off. He has the range to balance wrath with tenderness, making Drew's fight both personal and universal. The promise of punching back implies physicality, but it's also about reclaiming agency, refusing to be the person who takes the hit and smiles. Even as Drew adjusted into this new chapter in his life, the weight of uncertainty remained with him. Every day presented new challenges, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Some mornings he awoke determined, ready to face whatever came his way, while other mornings, the reality of his circumstances hit him so hard that getting out of bed seemed impossible. The sound of the wheelchair against the floor reminded him of everything he'd lost, but he refused to let it define who he was. Drew frequently found himself staring out the window at night, lost in thought. Memories of the man he used to be tormented him, as did visions of who he still wished to be. He understood that his life was not finished, just changed. Every therapy session, every instant of progress, no matter how modest, gave him motivation to keep fighting. But underneath that determination lay a maelstrom of fear and doubt, which he was not always able to quell. Drew didn't know what the future contained, but one thing was certain. He wouldn't stop moving forward. Even in the face of paralysis, his spirit remained unwavering. According to General Hospital spoilers, Kai Taylor could be arrested and give a false confession as the Drew Kane shooter. Will Kai carry out a daring plot to save Trina and Portia Robinson? GH fans know Kai made a huge mistake when he went against Trina and her family. Kai praised Drew and believed he was doing the right thing by telling him about Curtis Ashford's dirty agenda. However, Kai eventually developed a new perspective after listening in on Drew's recent talk with Curtis. It made Kai realize Drew is a monster. Thus his loyalty has returned to Trina and the people she cares about the most. That was clear when Kai chose to leave Drew bleeding on the floor rather than calling for help after the gunshot. Kai's top concern was to get Trina out of there and avoid any charges. Keeping Trina out of legal trouble may be a major concern for Kai as the plot progresses. Kai and Trina's fingerprints are found in several locations at Drew's house, so their covert visit may come back to bother them in the future. If it appears like Trina may face charges of any kind, Kai may fake a false confession and arrange a bargain to ensure her freedom. Kai may undertake a daring move like that for Portia's sake if the cops start looking too closely at her as a suspect. Kai wouldn't want Trina to lose her mother to prison, especially after thwarting Curtis' attempt to gain an advantage against Drew. If Kai falsely admits, he may lie about the true cause for his visit to Drew's residence, so avoiding the Portia blackmail scenario. Many followers turned against Kai after he betrayed Trina and her family. Thus this predicament provides an opportunity to earn those fans back. Kai may continue to demonstrate that Trina and her family are more important to him than anything else. Perhaps Kai will even be willing to do jail time. At least until the truth about the shooter is revealed. According to General Hospital spoilers, Kai and Trina are stuck in a problem that is only going to grow messier. So stay tuned for updates on all of the scary news coming up. At the Five Poppies Resort, Jocelyn and Vaughn were still imprisoned in an empty room. Joss was surprised that Britt didn't assist them. Pascal and one of his henchmen brought them water, but only in return for information. Joss and Vaughn try to portray themselves as inexperienced agents. Britt was creeping up the corridor into the room while the henchman held a knife to Joss' throat. After pushing Joss on the ground, Pascal stated that if the code to the WSB box Joss provided him was incorrect, he would consider her useless and dispose of her. After he left, Joss and Vaughn argued in despair, and Vaughn thought there must be a mole in the agency. Britt eventually answered the door. Joss begged her to help them get out, and she had to admit that they were WSB. Britt refused to explain how she was alive or why she was there, telling Jocelyn that she could only do so much. She placed a pair of manicure scissors in Joss' hand, told them they would have to help themselves, and then went. Pascal intercepted Britt as she was walking out the door. She asked him what the heck was going on and why he was kidnapping honeymooners. When Pascal responded he was managing things, she told him he was lousy at taking initiative, and that he should not do anything else until he returned. In the room, Josh showed Vaughn the scissors. Later, when one of the henchmen returned to the confinement chamber, Josh and Vaughn startled him by not being tied up, and Vaughn attacked him. Britt returned to her room and attempted to call Jason using the burner phone, but it did not go through. When the call was finally connected, the reception was awful. As Britt cried into the phone, "Jason, you have to come back," Pascal walked in, grabbed her arm, and informed her that this time she had gone too far. Jason called Danny from the Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris. His flight was delayed. As he waited, he recalled his recent chats with Britt. When Britt's call came through, he was already in line to board. Because of the poor reception, it is unclear what he heard. Drew retrieved Willow's engagement ring from the safe at his house. While Trina and Kai were hiding in the bedroom, Drew placed the ring in front of a picture of him and Willow on the mantel, noting that Willow would see that everything was going to be fine. As he finished his drink, a shot was fired, striking him in the back. He collapsed to the floor, as a shadowy person approached and shot him in the back once more. After Trina and Kai believed they had heard the gunman leave, Kai walked outside with a softball bat to investigate. Trina followed soon after. She checked Drew and discovered a pulse. As she went to stop the bleeding, she wanted to call 911, but Kai told her to leave because they couldn't be there. They noticed a car approach and went to the back door. Kai paused to leave the front door slightly open. Tracy stepped up to see the front door open. She was astounded to find Drew shot on the floor. After checking for a pulse, she contacted the cops while attempting to stop the bleeding. Police and paramedics arrived. The detectives wanted to talk to Tracy, but she refused to allow her nephew ride in an ambulance alone. However, Dante and Anna approached Tracy as she was about to depart. Dante called Scout's nanny, who informed him that Scout was attending a Lila's kids' sleepover at camp. Anna asked Tracy to describe what had transpired. Tracy discussed the restraining orders and Drew's out-of-control behavior, after telling how she discovered him. She also stated that, because to the restraining orders on Danny and Rocco, Scout was unable to visit Monica, one of her few delights these days being to see the children. Tracy claimed to have stopped by to reason with Drew. Dante discovered the safe still open and signs that someone had entered through the rear entrance. He stated there were no signs of a struggle, and the only item out of place was the softball bat left on the living room floor. Tracy left for the PCPD to make an official statement. Dante claimed there was a long list of people who wanted Drew dead, and Anna wondered who was at the top. Brennan was attempting to relax in his WSB office by listening to jazz on his phone. Colette came in and asked if he had heard from Joss and Vaughn, but he hadn't. She urged him again to accept that the Five Poppies' purpose had failed, and that he needed to end it. He questioned whether she wanted to see him fail. Colette asked Brennan if she could go to the Five Poppies to clean up the aftermath of an operation. Carly arrived.